All right, gentlemen, good morning. My name is Tim Rohr. I'm with Parkson Corporation. We're going to be doing some startup training on your RHS, which is, in our terminology, is a rotor shear, is what we call it. It's a wired drum for thinning out or screening out headworks materials. You also have two AquaGuard wash presses. We'll go over what those things mean and what they do. It's a little different than experience if guys have had rotor presses or whatever. This is a machine that actually will wash the organics and then it cycles through some presses. So I've been where you guys have been. I was a chief of O&M in North Carolina at a Cary plant there for 15 years. So, you know, we all understand the equipment, what it takes to maintain the equipment, also the dollars it takes to make sure it's done correctly from the town. So, one thing I will state, we're doing this on video for reference, and that is for reference. So anything that's specific, go to the IOM manual, which this is what that manual is we're going to go over, because I'm giving you general information. Anything that really needs to be checked out, and, you know, don't take everything for my word. I'm not the smartest guy on the planet. A lot of this book material is stuff that's common knowledge, but other stuff is specific to the machine. So we'll go over all that. So that being said, I've been with Parkson for 11 years now doing startups. A lot of guys here have seen me and know me. I'm out of Miami. Our office is in Fort Lauderdale. So right now, the rotor shear units, Hi-Core is a company we bought back in the 70s. Parkson acquired those, and we've been running those units here for, 40, 50 years. The main thing you need to know of anything calling us or any information you want to get is what you see right there where it says project number. That P034, the 34 tells me it's a rotor shear. 1349 is your project number. And all that information that's in this manual comes from the engineers that built this, designed the machine specifically for your headworks. We don't build widgets. Everything is custom made and fit. That's the number you'll need. If you can call me or call the Fort Lauderdale office and say, hey, I'm at Marion County and I've got a rotor shear 1349, we'll pull up every bit of information, drawings, wiring, anything that we need to help you guys get repairs done or get you through anything that's going on with the unit. The presses, they have a little bit different number. They're still 3449s, but they have a and it's in the end of this manual. They have actually a 43 number. So those are the numbers that you'll need to know, and we'll show you where the nameplates are when we go up on top and look at the units. So these units are 48 by 72. That's the size. They're basically primarily for headworks, screening out fines. So you'll see how these work when we get up there. We go down to section 4. It's a little ways down yet. All right, so this is the basic unit, and one thing we will discuss, and we always try to cover this when we're going in there, these units are gear driven. This is the 1-horse motor that drives the gearbox that drives your drum. That's all the size of the motor is. But I'll tell you from past experience, when you guys start to work on these things and do different stuff, follow your lockout tag out policies, because that gearbox doesn't care whether your arm's in there or you're hanging on the drum when somebody starts it, because it'll take it, take you with it. So make sure these are equipped there with oil checkpoints. You got E-stops. This is your influent, comes in the drum. The drum actually will rotate towards the gearbox. It's chain driven. Your chain will be a poly chain, which means there's no lubrication required, which is a nice thing for you guys. You don't have to worry about trying to get in here and spray this down with some lubricant or whatever once a week. So it's a poly chain. It's held together by a stainless steel shaft and a roll pin. Very easy to punch the roll pin out, pull the shaft, separate the chain if you have to do any work on it. Sprocket, gear drive, they're all poly. Drum drive is poly, so there's no cast iron steel that'll wear out. So you shouldn't have any issues with that for a long time. They're run on 4 trunnion wheels. We've actually upgraded the wheels. This is the most critical part of this unit just because they're in a wet environment, and they're sealed bearings. Actually, they have grease ports, and we've put the grease ports on the outside of the units now, so you guys don't have to take the doors off to try to get in there to grease the units. The one thing I would suggest, we'll get to the maintenance schedule here in a minute, but at least, once a quarter, pop one of these doors off, and these doors have magnetic switches So if you take that door off, your machine will not run. You'll lose your control power light, and we'll show you how all that works, along with the e-stops. The e-stops are wired in, and the door panels are all wired in on a CR. You can see them inside your cabinet, and I'll show you those. They're lit now, and they should be lit, so I have control power, and I have my door secured. It's a 120 circuit. When you break that magnetic strip, where are you going with that? You're right. When you break that magnetic strip, that 120 circuit is broken, and then you lose your control power or your light. That's one thing I can't stress enough to the electrical guys, even the operators. If you don't have that white control light on your cabinet, you're not going to get anything to run. So, but the thing is, that's easy to rectify, because the white light's telling you everything's good to run the 480 power. It sends the 120 signal to your starters, then you can run the 480. But if you don't have that white light, it's either e-stop or door panel. That's it. There's nothing else that really kills that control power. So you got a wire wedge screen in here built on a stainless steel frame. The drum will stay forever. I mean, you should never have any problem with the drum. There's a head box in there, and we'll look at that. Basically, the influent flow comes in through your box, through the head box, spills out, coats the drum, and the drum is turning about 8 to 11 RPMs. That's wide open, and the water just filters through the drum, and the material's caught in the screen, works its way out, drops into your press. Some things we'll go over when we get outside. The press is actually in your control cabinet. There's a small little IRO computer. Very easy to adjust. There's some default settings in now. I'll show you when we get out there. I'll show you the drawing here before we go up. But those can be changed. I can't operate your plan until we get it going. So they set default settings in there, but they can all be adjusted to how long it takes before your press comes on. There's an accumulation timer. So that press right now is going to wait for about 5 minutes of run time from your screen, and then the press will start its cycle. An AWP press is a little different than what you're used to with a rotor press. This will cycle through a count about 0.3 of a second. When the press comes on, it'll rotate, stop. The spray bar washes the organics back through the drain, flushes the pan out with a spray bar. It'll run again for 3 seconds and then stop. And then the final is a 30-second press to press the material, clean your basket out, and put that into your discharge pipe. So, and that can all be adjusted. And that's what I said, we'll work on that when we get to that point of, once you get the plan up and running, we'll give you some guidelines of where that stuff needs to be set depending on how much material you got coming in. Everything on this drum, cabinets, everything else is stainless steel. There's really no carbon steel on it. The frame a little bit, but other than that, you shouldn't have any issues with degradation or rust or anything like that. Trunnion wheels are very easy to take out. We've come up with a new bracket system. This actually wheel, and this is one thing that guys need to understand from the maintenance side point, if you do have to replace a wheel. These wheels have roll pins in them that sit into that bracket, and one side's longer than the other. What I've had people come out and they come try to replace a wheel, and they stick the roll pins in there, and the wheel's sitting up off the bracket because they've got the roll pin on the wrong side. And you'll see that. And the reason why we're doing that is to keep the force of that wheel locked in there on one side. And so usually the longer pins on the outer side, shorter pins on the inside where your grease fitting is, where the grease port is. So that's just some of the little nuances of it. Other than that, it's pretty basic. There's a tool actually in the office. It's a jack tool that you can put right in this bracket. It clips here, and we can actually jack the drum up. It comes on the back side. You can jack the drum up on the ring, take the wheel out, put your new wheel in, drop the drum down. Very easy to do. This end is easy because the drum will lift up without having to take the chain off. But when you get your two wheels back here, you'll have to disassemble that chain to get the drum to lift up enough to get that wheel to clear. Okay, we can go down a little bit. You can keep going. Yeah, this is all for controls. Let's go on down to section 5. We'll start on, that's talking about your interlocks there. These things, and I tell you they will go bad. But it's always, you guys know as well as I do, you can always jumper it out and find out if it's bad or not, and make sure which one it is. Because there's actually all 3 of these, and they're done in parallel. So if anyone is pulled, they're all going to go off. So you'll have to sort of find out which one. But I very rarely had these go bad, unless you're doing a lot of stuff and you're banging this thing around when you take the doors off or something like that, because all this is a magnet. A lot of times when I do maintenance on these things, I'll come in, I know I'm doing it, I'll bring a magnet with me. I can take the door off, and I'm not telling you to do this, but you can put a magnet on the back side and you can work on the drum without the doors on it. So that's just some of the stuff. But like I said, follow your safety rules. We don't recommend that, but I know you guys have to do certain things in the field to find a problem. So there we go. All right, and that's some electrical. We're going down to, let's go down to 5. Some of this is installation, which the contractor's already done. Okay, go down a little more. All right, back. A couple things specific to this drum. You actually have an internal and an external spray bar on solenoids piped in with plumbing. These things can be adjusted to run all the time, or they can be adjusted to run. Right now we have them set up on the initial default settings is when these things go into auto, they'll run for a minute and they'll be off for 10 minutes. If you find out the drum's not getting clean enough, or this one I would run, the external one I would run like 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off when we get up and going, because that's the one that actually cleans your drum from the outside as it's rotating around. The spray bar will clean from the outside. This will just help wash your organics out of the end of the drum as you're building up inside the drum. So this one is set to run a minute on, 10 minutes off, which that's fine. You can adjust that as need be. This one should run more. So your external one, when you guys get up and running, that's where you can adjust that. I've seen some plants, they just run it all the time. They just put it on a default setting to run automatically all the time. And yet that can be done in that little programmer. It's very simple. Okay, let's go down. The spray bar is actually just a metal pipe with tapped holes in it, and it has a 1/4 turn plastic nozzle. They're very easy, other than having to get in the drum. They will come out, but the simplest way is to have a guy crawl in the drum. They're 1/4 turn. You can take them all out in about 5 minutes and put new ones in, and you're good to go. Most of the time, they don't have any problems unless you're running on non-pot water and you had a lot of the growth, or you got a lot of material in there. And I don't know, I haven't looked, Josh, if we put strainers in line in there anywhere? There's strainers.
To the potable now. It will be to the non-pot.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about possibly just putting one strainer at the
main pipe.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's usually cures any of that problem if you have any growth or any solids into your reclaimed water. We're getting back. This is the chain poly drive here. It's ridden on a small gear. There is no tensioner in here. Some of our units have tensioners on the chain. So if you start seeing this thing, and it will stretch over time. Most people say even stainless steel chains stretch. That's what we see in our bar screens, stuff like that. All our screens are stainless, but over time that's going to stretch and give you some slack. You can actually take a link out very easily. You don't want to see that drum jumping or that chain inside. There's a little window here you can look into, and tell you the truth, after you get it running a while, that window is going to be pretty dirty. But it's 2 little 7/16 nuts you can take off, pull the window off, check your chain, make sure it's not flopping around in there. Because what tends to happen with lack of maintenance is that this wheel bracket right here, there's a pretty close tolerance to that chain. And if that chain starts jumping around or doing whatever, it'll start catching on that bracket, and you'll hear it. But that's what you'll find is most of the time I find people, this chain gets stretched out after a year and a half or so. And then they call me and go, oh, my chain broke. Well, what happened is this chain got so sloppy it caught the bracket and snapped the poly in half. So, because that, like I said, that gearbox is going to turn. The overloads are set to where it should be at full load. So before anything actually, the telltale sign for an operator is it starts tripping out for some reason. It just didn't trip out for no reason, other than a power blip or something like that. If it starts tripping out and you're resetting it and it's tripping out, then start checking your chain drive, because that's probably what's causing the issue. Okay, we can go on down. That's general. Okay, we'll go back up, please. One more. Okay. we're getting in this section 5 a little bit. We're getting into the maintenance, daily maintenance, which these are very maintenance free, I would say, from our standpoint. You just make sure the drum's running properly, and that's basically when you do your round. You know, when you go up and do your round, you guys know what it sounds like when it's running. You'll hear it, and if it's sounding different, then sort of do a little investigation, find out what that sound is. Make sure the drum's running smooth, no noises, no leaks from the gearbox. You know, it's general stuff you guys do all the time. Any alarm conditions, and make sure the guards are in place. You know, we don't want you guys taking the panels off and then doing the magnet thing and then running it without the panels. You know, that's a maintenance thing to do, line of sight, but you don't want to run the machine that way. You want to make sure everything's on it and covered. There is a guard over the shaft on the gearbox. By our OSHA standards, we have to put that little metal bracket over the turning shaft so you can't reach your hands in there. Weekly, we're looking at house cleaning, washing it down, making sure there's nothing built up. Head box distribution. The big head box in there actually does have a 4-inch port with a plug in it that down the road you guys can take that plug out. You can wash the head box out. You know, as far as general maintenance, once about every year, 6 months, whatever you think you're getting some buildup in that head box from solids, you can actually take the port off, flush it out, and then close it back up. And it's easy accessible. You'll see when you get up, I can almost reach my hand in there and take that port off. So that, anything under the covers, gearboxes, you know, debris, switches, you know, you just want to keep the thing in good running order. Inspect your trunnion wheels, you know, to make sure that all of them are spinning. They actually have, we'll go through that too, other than the inspection window for the chain and the back trunnion wheel, each trunnion wheel has a port that you can twist and turn the cover off, and you can see the wheel in there and put it back on. That, I would suggest doing that about once a quarter, just to make sure your grease line hasn't fallen off, broken off, whatever. I've seen guys call me and say my trunnion failed, but I've been greasing it every week, and I go in and take the port off and the thing's broke off the fitting. The grease has just been going in the pan for, you know, 2-3 weeks. So that's what happened. Okay, come on down a little bit. Monthly. That's where we get into chain sprocket. That's a little much. I think quarterly is okay. Check chain tension, drives. You want to make sure your chain drive and your sprocket are in line because that drum is actually floating on those 4 wheels. There is a stabilizer pad on the front, and that's another thing we'll get into. The stabilizer pad on the front of the drum actually has the drum sitting in it. So that is a wear part. It's a Teflon piece, but as long as your drum is running centered and well, that normally doesn't wear out. But when it wears out down the road, your drum can tend to walk one way or the other, and you'll see your chain starting to do this. Then you know you might want to check your stabilizer pad, and we'll go through all that outside. One thing I do like about our IOMs, I did computer stuff for my plant. We were all computerized, checks off. This gives you the description. If you do have a computed system or somehow that you guys are saying, okay, when I go up, what is my daily, or what is my monthly, or what is my weekly? This gives you the description, and it's a little backwards on our IM, but we get down a little further. They got a bullet point, so you can take that page of bullet point and put it up in your maintenance office, and you can see everything it's supposed to be done as a bullet point. Then you can go back to here and see what the description is actually. So it's set up pretty well. Okay, go down a little bit more. Okay, quarterly oil levels. I've checked all the oils in it for pre-startup. And it's funny, we'll get out and I'll show you, but the gearbox for the SEW Eurodrive, the check for the port is on the back side. Very difficult to get to, but as long as you know there's oil, it's a lap gear. So I checked them all yesterday, so you don't really have to do that. It's basically the port is on the front side where you can get to it easy is the fill port, and then you have a drain plug on the bottom. And we'll go over some of that when we get outside, because like I said, I was an old maintenance supervisor, and I think they ought to take a 1/4-inch tube and put it in that drain port, bring it out so you can drain it without running it all over your shelf and everything like that. Check all your fasteners, bolts. That's just a nut and bolt on a quarterly. Your output reducer shafts, that's a little much, you know, semi-annually. Those things, you know as well as I do, they're going to run till they quit running, and then you're going to replace the gear drive. I mean, not the gear drive, but the sprocket. Okay, go up one more. Okay, we get into annually. We want to make sure that we are replacing the gearbox oils. I suggest once a year. Around here, you guys don't have a whole lot of temperature change for condensation in gearboxes, a little bit, but you know, if you can, we used to go back to the point where we would actually just take a sample, send it off, and the guys would tell us whether the oil need was good or bad, you know, in some of our larger equipment. These are so small, I mean, I think they only use 1.5 quarts or something like that. It'll tell me here in a little bit, but so changing them once a year is not out of the question. You only have 3 gearboxes there. You've got the 2 for each screen and the 2 for the presses. So, you know, you might want to do that, make sure that's done once a year to keep everything running well. Cylinders, you're checking for any damage to the screen, any damage inside. You know, the only way this thing's really going to get damaged if for some reason it starts rubbing on something or hitting something, or something's in there it shouldn't be in there, nuts, bolts, whatever. So just check on that and make sure your screen's all in good function, and all your control switches, your cabinets. We'll go through the electrical up there. Pretty straightforward. I'll let you know right now, I got a problem with one cabinet. I got a hot that shouldn't be hot, so LMX working with me, but the other unit's completely fine, and the one unit we are working on is completely fine except for that one drive for the drum. So we'll get that worked out. Okay, let's go up. One more. And if you notice up there it says synthetics. If you're using synthetics, you can get by with every 3 years. You know, so you don't have to do it every year. That's just depending on cost and what you guys normally use. There's the bullet point maintenance schedule. So this is actually nice to be able to print off and keep in the maintenance office or in a book or wherever you guys are going to do your maintenance from. It gives you the dailies. Weeklies is just a bullet point that reads out what we talked about. Every 3 years, synthetic, every year, regular. And then you can go back to what we just went over, and it gives you the description of what we're actually talking about. So it's really good at self-explaining what needs to be done on these. You do not have the Easy Care. You have grease ports, so that's why that's noted in red there. Our Easy Care, and I think we're getting away from it. We're trying out a greaseless trunnion wheel. Of course, it was impregnated with grease to start and put together, and it didn't seem to last any longer than our general wheels with greasing, so it's cost that we didn't need to pass on to the customer. Okay. Okay, another good thing here with our IOMs, they give you a lubrication chart. So, and I'm not saying you have to use these, you won't void the warranty but we're saying you want to use something comparable to that. You know, you may not use Exxon or Mobil or whatever, you may use Shell. So there's a lot of different opportunities and different ones there. They're all basically the same 220 synthetics that go in the trunnion wheels. I like to use an EP2 lithium grease for the trunnion wheels. The lithiums just tend to keep water out a little bit better. So
use the O'Malley 220.
Yeah, that's fine.
Gearbox.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, all that stuff. And like I said, this is just a general chart of what, you know, you can look it up and cross-reference it, but anything like that will be okay. Yeah, we get into volumes of grease. That's debatable all the time. We say a couple shots a week in the trunnion wheels. You know, that's all you really need. You go up on a Monday or a Friday, whenever you do your greasings, and go up and hit each wheel with 2 shots. You know, 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces of grease. I mean, the only place I ever had to fight that was I had some Andrus centrifuges in my plant, and they were so delicate with the bearing temperatures that we had to weigh out what 2 ounces was, or 1.5 ounces, or how many shots. So each gun is different, but you know, a general grease gun that you use, just a couple shots in each wheel once a week, you know, and then just make sure you're getting it to that trunnion wheel, which you can see through your inspection port. You know, you'll see a little ring of grease right on the outside of that wheel. Okay. Chain sprocket replacements. This is all section 6 in your manual we're going over is actually repairs. We talked about that a little bit. It'll tell you how to, you know, you go to your figure, you'll see it here in a minute, but it'll show you how to separate that chain, or how, you know, how it's supposed to go on. adjustments of the chain. If it's loose, 2 adjustments. When we get up there, you'll see the gearbox is actually on a slide. So instead of having to break the chain apart and try to take a link out initially, you can slide that gearbox back. Just make sure it's square, but you slide that gearbox back to the same distance and it'll tighten your chain up. And then when you run out of that length, then you'll have to go to the point of taking a link out. This is exactly what we're talking about. It's got the jack bolts here on your motor drive. You loosen up your 3/4 bolts, then you can jack it either way, or adjustment to pull your chain out to tighten it up if you have any slack in your chain.
What kind of slack do you want in that chain?
Deflection of maybe an inch or 2, couple inches. I mean, you'll see it now, it's even like that because it's coming off the top sprocket and it comes down to the big poly sprocket here. And so basically you want to see it picking up. You know, you don't want to see that thing slapping down here somewhere, or you know, that's what said 2 inch. I was just telling you general, I didn't even look at the drawing, but yeah, about 2 inch deflection. So that you'll see that's normal right there, that blue line of 2 inch. If you get any more than that, then it'll start adjusting your gearbox a little bit to tighten it up. And you'll notice it too in the drum, because you'll start seeing the drum jerking around a little bit as it turns. Disassembly and repair. We went over that before. This is more of a detailed operation of how there's a little roll pin in. You can take a small punch it out, and basically that roll pin goes through your slot and then it goes through your groove on your stainless steel shaft. So that's what holds that pin in. This shaft and the chain actually are done very well. There has printing on the chain. It'll say in and out. It'll say in right here. I think on the other side it's got out. But anyway, it tells you which way to push your pin out, because this pin is actually tapered. So when it goes in and fits, and then the roll pin gets pushed in and it locks in. I think actually this thing goes out the other way. But that's the finished assembly there. You want to make sure, and it is a little tricky because on the shaft, one end actually has a flat, I say machine square on it. So when it goes in, it actually goes into a slot on the chain and locks it in to keep that from spinning around. So it's a flat surface. When it goes in, it locks it in, then you put your pin in it. Well, that's general information there for you guys with sprockets. You know, your hub and your drive gearbox, and then the sprocket just goes on the gearbox. Pretty straightforward. You have a poly drive drum, and it's bolted to the drum. This is actually really nice because it's in segments, and it's in 3 parts. And if you'd ordered a new one, you just take those bolts off. One thing I would recommend, I do it on my other machines, is I don't call them button head bolts. Yeah, I think it is a button head bolt, because these are standard nuts. What I do is I use a button head bolt. It's sort of self-centering. When I put my first section on in the center, I'll put that button head bolt, and it'll center that thing on the other holes. Then you put your normal nuts and bolts on and take the button head out and put your last one in. It'll self-center it for you. Okay, back to the trunnion wheel. That's the assembly. Now, these things the bearings can be replaced. It's almost to the point it's a lot more trouble than it is to get a new wheel altogether, but you can replace bearings in them. This shaft here, you can see it's got to cut out it keeps it from spinning. And here's the roll pin sets I was telling you about, because a lot of times these guys will pull the wheels off and the roll pins are actually be degraded or gone, or they broke them off trying to get the wheel up out of it. But these can be, the problem is if you do break one off, it's got to be drilled out so you can put a new roll pin, because if you don't have the roll pin that goes in the bottom of that shaft will try to move around on you. Nifty tool that he has in the office. One of our guys actually came up with that in the field, because normally we would just put a pump jack underneath and jack the drum up. But since most of the time, and when you go up there, you'll see these things have drain pans on them, so there's no solid surface that you can really get up under the drum except up near the back of the frame. So we came up with this little jack here. It just locks in the corner, lifts your drum up, and the wheels just pop out and pop them back in and lower it down. Works really well. The construction of your drum, and this is what I was talking about, stabilizer pad. I guess they call it Xylon, I call it Teflon. It's a different material. 2 bolts hold that in. It's very easy to replace. It sits up on your front corner here. Basically, it works on that drum ring, and it just keeps the drum centered on your unit. Like I said, it should never be a problem unless you've got slack in your chain. The more slack in your chain, the more that drum can travel on the wheels. And then that's where this comes into play to keep your drum centered.
Is there a cover plate on the other side to get to that wheel too?
Yes, sir. Yeah, there's a port, but basically to change the wheels, you're going to just take the door off.
Yeah, the whole door open.
Yeah, and then you can get right to it. Yeah, there's nothing that locks you away from the outside from that wheel. Actually, when we go up, I can whip a panel off and you can see that. Okay, go ahead. Spray headers, that's basically what we talked about earlier, quarter turn nozzles, okay. Repair, replacement. They're tapped pipe, so even if something was to break off, you could just retap the hole and then your nozzle will fit back in. That's what they're talking about there. Okay, it's going down, just go down to where you get to the electrical part for a little bit. Troubleshooting, we'll go over that in the field. It's everything we've sort of covered. Replacement parts. One thing about this, go back down a little bit. This is actually a nice guide for us. You call Fort Lauderdale where our parts department is, or where they work out of there. Most of our parts come from our warehouse in Vernon Hill, Illinois, or our manufacturer, and we can get those readily available, and most of the time overnight, unless it's something weird like a gearbox or something like that. These are the part numbers for reference. These actually give you the description, so when you're talking to one of our parts guys that they specialize in each piece of equipment, you can just tell him, hey, I need the sprocket plate only, I need a trunnion bracket, you know, whatever you need, and there's our part numbers. And you don't really need the part number, they'll find it off the description of your project number. But that sort of gives you an idea of what we call most of the stuff, and you can figure it out. These are Euro drives, these R77s, 1 horse Euro drive. It's a motor gearbox combo. So you know, but all that stuff is, I call off the shelf, but some of it takes a longer lead time. Okay, going down some more. 9. Yeah, keep going. That's all cut sheets. Going down to where you got the it says electrical panels. I think it's way down on the page. It's almost at the end. Yeah, the bill of material, there you go. That's the cut sheets going down. And they do have all the cut sheets for every component from Elemac. Elemac makes our cabinets. They're really great guys. Numbers on the cabinet, like I called the guy with the problem I'm having with that cabinet. They're walking me through it, and they'll go through every component with you. They have our Parkson drawing number. And if you need any parts, pieces, relays, anything like that, they'll be able to get those to you. I mean, you can call us, and we'll get them for you, or a lot of times you go right to the manufacturer, you can get them. One more page, I believe. There you go. Okay, basic schematics. I don't know if you guys know it, need to know it, or whatever. I'm sure you have electricians that handle that. But we have in each section, each cabinet, we have a horsepower motor, that's your screen drive. And then we have a 3 horse, that's your press drive, because your press is pushing more materials, larger motor and gearbox. All these are in the IOM. Basically, it goes line for line of what you're looking for here. These are your interlocks for your doors. CR2, so that's where CR2 is lit. I know I'm making contact on all my doors, so it gives you things to look at. CR2 light in your cabinet and your relay is not on, you got a door problem. CR1, that's right there. That's your control power relay. I can tell you, if you don't have that light, you're not going to have that light, because it's not going to let you run. So that's things you know, as operators, you can open the door up in the cabinet, whether you can or not. I know some of that's, you know, rules and regulations of whether you guys can open up a panel. But it's just some things to look for, and I'll show you when we get up there. These two little lights, the first two relays on the panel, that's what you'll look for. Now, if you've got both of those lit, then you should be able to run your motors. Okay, going down a little bit more. This is just your line logic of what everything runs and details and where the wiring is. Get down a little more. I want to get to that one more. Okay, it's sort of hard to read here, but this is the page that has the little PRT1, which I call an I/O. It's an I/O computer. It's a Zelo. It's actually really, this directions right there, press menu, access times, and they have T1 through T8. These are default factory settings that are set in there. You'll see them a little better when you're not on the screen. But these are all set by the factory, and you can change them at will, whatever you guys need to do. That's why I was talking about accumulation timers, spray bar on and off timers, drum delay. So right now it's set at 30 seconds. So when your signal goes away and the drum is no longer called to run in auto, 30 seconds later, the drum will shut off. You can make that longer if you want to wash the drum down. You know, you can make it a minute and let it wash down for a minute before it shuts off. It just depends on how often it's coming on and off. If it's going to be off like at night or something and it's going to be off for hours, you can set that to have it wash down for 20 minutes or something, whatever you want to do. So you have a wash cycle, repeat, and then you have a press cycle, and down on the bottom there's a 5 right here, and that's what we were talking about your press earlier, that the press will cycle once, twice, 3, 4, and then the 5th count will be when it runs for that 30 seconds or 40 seconds to press your material out. That can be changed according to how often you need to run your press. So we'll work on that as we get closer to start up. Okay, we can go down a little bit more now. Yeah, that's all field wiring. Cabinet components, pretty straightforward. You'll have a screen, you'll have the solenoids, you'll have your press, and you have the solenoid. So that's basically the setup. One thing you do have are counters. So when you start running your units and you're alternating back and forth, the good thing, you know, just to make sure your time runs are the same on each unit, or try to keep them close. You know, you can run them for, I think you guys are only going to run one at a time most likely. Run one for a week, take it offline, run the other one for a week. You don't want one sitting. If you're going to have it sit for a month or so on those trunnion wheels, I would suggest just bumping the drums just to keep them from flat spotting the wheels, because the weight sitting on the wheel will flat spot eventually if you let it sit too long. All right, now you can go on down to the drawing. Okay, you got 2 units. I think they got opportunity for a third, but depending on growth, going down a little more. Okay, this is the basic setup. You have unit 1, unit 2, your press is on the end, then you have a common discharge chute going into your dumpster. This press does a really good job depending on the water, the organics, how much you put in it. This stuff will squeeze that stuff pretty hard to where you should be getting a clump of almost like paper product in a wad.
Is it like an auger press?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's got a screw in here with a brush, and then it's got a press zone right here, and right behind there there's 2 solenoids. One is actually to every cycle it washes the organics. It sprays the press area from the outside in to wash the organics back into the plant, and the other one is to flush the drain pan out in the bottom, and that'll cycle through that. This will cycle through on the short counts, and at the end of that the flush will come on and run for a certain amount of time to wash anything out of the bottom of the pan. Okay. So this is all your basic setup. The one thing here, this is that we watch once you get started. Cold weather, dryness, some of this you'll start seeing, depending on how dry your material is, whether you get your amps on your press, they're set up at 4.6 amps. So that thing will push pretty hard. If it starts tripping out, then we look at options of, is it drying the material too much? Should we put more water to it? Stuff. So you have a lot of options, but this is a short run, so you're probably never going to have any issues. I got plants that run a 30-foot pipe out of these things, and they still press and they push on out into the dumpsters. So basically, influent comes in, you got your effluent going straight out your pan, no problem. There's your head box we talked about with the clean out. and the discharge point. So the discharge point, depending on how much material you're putting in, that's what we'll do to adjust that run time. You know, if you need to run it less counts, just put it on 2, it'll cycle once and then press. You know, if you're getting a lot of material. When we go out, we'll look in there, there's a perforated basket in the bottom of that brush to let the water and stuff out. I'll show you sort of where the point is. You don't want it to get any higher than that basket. You know, that material should be clearing out of there prior to getting built up. Because what'll happen, you get built up in here and then something will bridge you and then you'll be back up into the top of your screen. Okay. The rest of it, that's all. Any questions what we got now? I mean, we'll go up top and look at the unit and watch it run a little bit and let you get a little feel and look at the cabinets. And I know it's a new piece of equipment for a lot of you guys, so but it's not as daunting as it looks. It's just a drum on 4 wheels driven by a chain. So it's sort of like a motorcycle, you know, 2 wheels with a chain and it goes. This is what the biggest thing is, just making sure everything's kept, you know, maintenance wise to make it turn. You'll see it's very low speed, 11 RPMs. It does have a 0 speed switch in the back, which that Miltronics has already been set up. Since we're not running an auto yet, I can't check it, but it is pulsing. I've already looked, you know, it's seeing the targets. There's 2 targets on the drum, and as it comes around, basically that's a fail safe that a lot of engineers are putting in now in case your chain were to break while you got flow coming in and nobody knows it, because the light on the motor says it's running, the motor's running, everything's going, but the drum's not turning. That thing will shut you off, give you an alarm. All right, we'll go up top and let you look around a little bit.
Who else has these?
Hollywood, right?
Yeah, I'd have to get you a list. I mean, we've got tons of, I mean, especially in this area too. I mean, I'm trying to remember where I did start up last.
Got one for you.
Yeah, I think it was out there too.
Pinellas had them years.
All right, we're ready?
They catch corn.
Yeah. All right, guys. Just real quick, I know, and you guys can walk around after we're done, as far as, you know, wanting to look around and see, kick the tires and so forth. So right now you'll see this is what we're talking about: wire wedged, solid frame stainless trunnion wheels. Your grease port is here on the outside for each trunnion. Pretty straightforward. There's your stabilizer pad. You can actually inspect that with this door off. So if you actually see it wearing on this side or wearing on this side, you know it's dragging or pulling eventually. Right now it will rub a little and keep it in place, but that's what it is. Your jack will go right here. You can lift this drum up and that can be replaced without having to do a whole lot of work and labor. Stainless steel drain pan, the effluent's going wherever it's going, over to your B&R basins. A lot of times what I check is even these drums I can pretty much turn by hand, you know, so that's the way you know whether it's locked up, not locked up. One thing we can, your basic panels. Make sure power is off before you open these things up. I mean, you're going to have to turn them on to all right, pretty straightforward. Let me get my key real quick. I got a key over here. I call it my key. As they say in the movies, I'm a professional, don't try this at home. Okay, so the panel's hot. This is your little IRO timer that we talked about, where you can change your settings. Very simple, green button, up and down, left and right. That's it. You follow the diagram on your drawings, it'll tell you which timer to go to. And the thing about it, if you don't know at the very end when you make the adjustment and you hit the green button to go out, it'll ask you, do you want to keep your change or not? And if you don't know, you can hit no, it goes right back to the way it was. Or you can just leave it alone and eventually it'll go back to the display screen. So, you know, you can't really, there's nothing in there really to screw up. And if it's all pre-programmed, anything happens wrong, turn the power off, cycle the power back on, and it's going to go back to the original program. You're not going to lose anything. So here you got your mains coming in with your breakers or your amp fuses. One of these is for your, this one here is actually for your 120 control power. It's taking that 480, stepping it down for 120. That breaker goes to your press. This soft start and breaker goes to your drum, and that's it. These two here I have set about halfway. These are secondary overloads is what we call them. They're backups in case one of these were to fry closed and you can't get it to stop or run, or it's running too high or running too high amps. You'll see this red light come on, which we'll see this in a minute when I start the drum. That red light will come on for a second as the soft starts bringing the drum up, and then it goes off. What happens is if that red light comes on and it stays on for that amount of time that I have it set, it'll trip you out. It'll go to a fault. Yes, sir?
You say if you make changes in there and save them, but if you turn the power back off and on, it's going to remember the default, not the changes you make?
No, sir. Once you make those changes and hit yes, it'll load that to the program and it'll keep it, whether you cycle the power or not.
Okay.
Just if you're unsure of the change and you don't know, or things happen where you go, did I push the right button? Not. Just go out of it and it'll go back to its regular setting. All right, so pretty much this is what we're talking about as far as my relays 1 and 2. Right now you see neither one of them are lit. Reason why is I got that door panel off. So it's off, which means my CR2 is broken to 120 on my panel, which will not allow me to run my unit. And when I'm talking about control light, I'm talking about this light right here. You can test it, you see it lights up. Right now it's not lit. For me as an operator, that's a problem because I have no 480 power if I don't have that control power. So real quick, we'll put this door back on. I'm not going to lock it in, but
Bring your magnet clip on.
no, I didn't bring my magnet today. Don't tell nobody I told you guys that. All right, so now you see my relay. CR2 is lit. And so since I did have a fault, or the system fault, I'm going to have to go back here, hit my reset. Now my CR1 is lit, which tells me I'm good to go. I got my power light. Clear everybody's hands. And that's the soft start kicking in. You heard a little bit of power going to the motor before, and so it's running now, and that's wide open. So that sequences of what'll happen when you're in auto. When that signal to call to run's going to come on, that drum will start running like that. It'll start accumulating time, and once that timer gets to the set point in your program, your press is going to come on. And it'll be cycling through the solenoids as it's going on its own. It's all set up in that timer. So now your press is running. The press has a brush in it that's replaceable. Wear bars that are replaceable. He actually has a spare part of wear bars in the spare parts kit. And the cover I took off there, that's your press zone. You don't see a whole lot in it, but that press zone is where the water goes in and washes your organics. You can look at the drawings I've written on that outer solenoid. I wrote an F, which is flush. So that's your pan underneath. There's a pan that washes any grease or organics out the drain after it presses them out of your, comes out of your screen. So that's everything in normal operation right there.
These brushes that are on the auger in here, do those have to get replaced?
They can, yeah, they will down the road. I mean, once they get wore down, what happens is they normally will wear down to a nub, and you'll see the screws starting to scrape on the stainless steel pan down there, and you know it's time to change them. There's two options. I actually have done it just by taking the chute out of the way and taking the fan motor off, and I work the brush off the screw and I work it back on. It's a little tedious, but it's better than having to try to pull the screw out of the unit. Yeah, you'll have to push up on that handle. It's a little, Yeah, they all are.
Well, looks like it, you have to take out and walk out into that.
Yeah, that's an inspection port and also being able to wash. I mean, a lot of the problem with these units that I see with the presses, like if you want to wash that perforated plate out, there's really no way to wash it from underneath or anything. It's either through that inspection hole or put your hose through the top here. So, and the one thing, we've got an e-stop back there. We got an e-stop right here on your unit, and I got one right there. Any one of those, they're all tied together, will kill the whole unit. So, and that's another thing about looking and knowing what you're doing, is it kills the unit, but what does it also do? It kills my light. So as soon as I lose that 120, nothing will run. So now, like I said, you either got your door interlock or you got your e-stop. And right now, CR2 is lit, so I know it's not my doors. So it's got to be an e-stop somewhere that's causing me not to be able to run. Same situation. You reset your e-stop. I think it's reset. Twist and turn, there it goes. Everything's back and running. So I would suggest before you set your e-stop, you turn all your equipment back off. I mean, just so somebody's not hanging on to something when you find, oh crap, an e-stop got pushed, and somebody's looking in the drum and you push the reset button and they get taken along for a ride. The spray bars are up top. You have your internal, external like we talked about. Cut the drum off so you can stick your head in there. But you can see where those that spray bar, one is underneath that protection tray and the other is on the outside of the drum. The outside of the drum, it looks a little more daunting to get to, but you can get to it by taking the covers off on that side. They're made pretty maintenance user friendly, so it's not too bad. Like I said, the only problem I have with the internals is I wish we had a quick connect way to pull the shaft out because it's mounted, but you just put a board or something in there, turn the drum. I usually turn the drum where the little flights are out of the way, and the skinniest guy can crawl in there and change out the nozzle. That would be you.
Is that a confined space?
That's determination by the plant. I wouldn't consider it confined space because you're really, that as long as there's nothing sitting in this pan, I think that pipe is, once it goes down the drain, it's going to go to your basin. There won't be any backup in here, I don't think. So you'll just have to look at that once we get into normal operation. By the OSHA manual, it is confined space because you're going to have to use a ladder, normal. You can't live in there is what they say. But for the quickness, you know, if the county requires you guys to fill out a permit and check the air, follow procedure, and then...
We do.
Okay, yeah, follow procedure and then jump in there, and it takes you a quarter turn on these things. They pop out, and you pop a new one in, and you're good to go. Any other questions, guys? Or, I mean, I'll let you guys walk around and look, and we can ask questions or talk about it, but I mean, any formal stuff that you don't understand or need more information on? Something I didn't cover? Questions?
Just those magnetic interlocks there?
Yes, sir.
I noticed that there's quite a bit of space.
Yeah, they're sending out a magnetic field.
Okay, so they're not that touchy?
Yeah, they're not that touchy.
I've been with ones if you move them.
Yeah, I've seen some too. We have them on our helicives that if they're not within a couple inches, they won't read. But yeah, these things are pretty.
Drives you crazy after a while.
But that CR2 will let you know.
And then it lets you know.
Yeah, and I apologize that they don't have, you know, it's not cost effective to put 4 relays in, one for each door panel. They got them all tied together, yeah, so they don't tell you which one, they just tell you you've got a panel problem. So you'll have to look around. Sorry.
The screen, where's that going to be located for the water that's feeding it for the plane?
We were trying to avoid giving you one at every structure.
That's very rare. I mean, you'll be able to tell because what happens is when you look down the drum or you take the panels off the side to look at the drum, you'll see a big brown swath or whatever that it's not getting clean.
I see the inspection plate. Is this for the wear bars, or can you see the?
That's the drain pan. Yeah, you really can't see the wear bars unless you pull the screw out. They're set up underneath
Do they have the breakaway bolts in them so if their wear bars start to wear out? Snap the bars off and you see the bolts?
No. They actually you start hearing the bolts on the screw and you'll know. I mean, the main telltale sign is this stainless steel pan in here. Once that brush gets worn, you'll start seeing that pan get shiny, and then you'll start hearing it on the wear bars.
Because we've seen on our bar screen, we have the same kind of setup,
Yeah.
the compactor, and we've seen where the wear bars had wore off, and the auger set down on the screen, and it wore that down like a piece of paper.
Oh yeah, it will.
Thin.
Yeah. These wear bars are really thick. I mean, they have a lot of wear, so you're going to hear a lot of racket, almost like gravel and rocks in there before you know it'll damage any of the body of the case.
On those solenoid valves
Yes.
from your washers, did you guys change out those to slow acting?
They're normally supposed to be slow opens, all of the ones that we order out.
Okay.
So they should be,
Change all that stuff out.
yeah, so that all should be slow hammer actuators. I mean, they all,
Yeah, because
you
you
hear
could be
them,
running close to 80.
yeah, and they'll click.
80 PSI coming out of there.
Yeah, we haven't had any problems with these. I mean, especially these because they're larger. But these ball valves are actually for throttling amount of flow that you want to put in your wash pan or whatever. And I can sort of control some of that hammer with those too. But
Shouldn't get too much off of that.
yeah, no, it's more of the open pipes.
Size, yeah.
But yeah, these are
The size of the actual pipe.
should be slow. We normally use the slow open solenoids, as they say. I mean, they all click and open up, but yeah, they don't.
Wham.
Yeah, I had a
A lot of Schedule 80 replacement that starts hammering that shit up.
Yeah, that's I guess preference of others, contractors. You know, whether you want to go back and repipe or do hard plumbing. But I think we really haven't had any problems with any hammers or anything like that. We have plants that have 120 psi on their reclaim systems and stuff, and it usually handles everything fine.
Maintenance wise, not for operation stuff. You can pull this side, or you have to pull the motor side to pull that screw out of there.
Motor side. Yeah. But I do believe the one good thing about what we've done here is you take this chute off and this top pan comes off. If you look in that hole, we redesigned that screw so it's a stub shaft.
Okay.
So you can actually take the screw off the shaft, the gearbox and shaft come out, and the screw comes out by itself. So it's a little bit easier to work on.
That's your screws all
Yeah, if you look in there,
plain veins.
see that it's held on by three bolts back there. The only problem with that design is, I'll tell you up front, if anything were to happen to I've seen one of those bolts get sheared off or whatever, then the screw starts flopping around in there but that's easy to fix. But yeah, that way, that whole gearbox can actually be slid back with the stub shaft on it and not have to pull the screw all at one time. So most of the time the problem is getting the gearbox off the shaft. So this way we've eliminated that issue.
Well, I like how you did the packing up here, because the old one on our bar screen, it'll build up back pressure and fill that gearbox up with water.
Yeah, we tried some of those direct drives like that too, and we just didn't see a whole lot of success with them.
It has the auger, a bearing block, and then two big bearings in it, and then the gearbox that pushes water right
Yeah,
through
just
and
run right through 'em.
gearbox up.
Now flow's coming into this pan, and as its pan's filling up, it's cascading. It's just not one section, but it cascades.
Yeah, the whole length